the first thing I talk about with people that I felt for myself was releasing the good girl syndrome. And then that led into good anything. Again, who's defining the good versus bad that you said who? And to me, the word that came up was, and is a root one, I actually think now doing so many human design things for people. Am I trying to prove myself or am I being my most sovereign self? And I was just constantly trying to prove, and also get that validation as an artist, as an actor, just as a quote, good human in some way. And I really feel now the adage that I found that I come back to over and over is, am I living from the outside in or from the inside out? And I try to just return to that all of the time and see so many other adages around that come up. Am I coming from love or for love? Well, only when I'm listening to my own intuition and doing my morning routine and filling up my well first, can I truly show up and want to be an energy worker for people in this and know that I'm coming from love and not for some external ego or validation.
Hello, Field Podcast audience. Welcome back today. I've got a new friend here with me today, but she was brought to me by one of my old friends, and that is our good friend, Erin Copeland. Erin has been on the platforms consistently with me over the last couple of years, the podcast, the radio show in 2024, our panels in 2025. She was just on a Substack Live with me a while back, talking not only about her current work that's out there, but the new addition to her books that she's putting out into the world. And so when she brought this woman to me, I was like, oh yeah, if Erin's recommending her, absolutely 1,000% have to meet her. And so she's like, I got this friend, Barbara Howlin, you got to meet her. I think she'd be a great guest. She'd be so fabulous on panels. And I'm like, okay, sign me up. So we had a meeting and 1,000%, like we hit it off right away. She only lives like 3.5 hours away from me. So it's like, oh my gosh, I might end up meeting Barbara in person first before I meet Erin in person first. Wouldn't that be wild? But I'm so happy to have Barbara here today. She and Erin collaborate on some things that you're going to get to learn about as we get to know Barbara today through the talking points. And she's going to have some great resources for you that we will share at the end and that will be on our website that are so timely for this time that we're in right now in the world. And that's going to make more sense as we go through it. She's going to talk about a topic that we've talked about before. We've had a couple of other guests talking about this. And I think that's for a reason last year. I think this is meant to be. I believe in the stars aligning and the universe aligning and higher power and God and whatever you believe in, bringing these things to us when we most need them. And that's what Barbara is going to be able to share today. But we're going to get to know her first and how she got on this path. She describes herself as creative, loving, passionate, and an expansive human. Barbara Howlin, welcome to the Feel Podcast.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
I'm so happy to have you here. All right, let's get right into it. We're going to start with prioritizing self-care in your life and what your journey's been like with that. And you're a busy person. You've got a lot going on. You are a creative. You are an actress. And you work in human design. You have family. I mean, you've got a lot of things happening here. So talk to me about the importance of this and how you have figured this out in a way for you.
Yeah, that running a small business, being an active creative, like I just finished directing a play, which I also acted in. Mm-hmm. And I have a 3-year-old, which is really in the height of it all. It feels like it's interesting. The first thing that comes to mind through all of this healing work was realizing it can feel like a juggling act, and realizing, I always think back on this quote from the great Nora Ephron when they were like, how do you juggle all those balls? And she says, I remember which ones are glass and which ones will bounce back. And the only ones that are glass are myself and my family. So that is first, I think, the awareness of I have to treat, as I say in my Artist Way groups, myself like a precious object to feel strong. And the simplest things are actually the most powerful. I've realized I do need a morning routine. Maybe not first thing because 3-year-old, but I still prioritize getting to it before I jump into any other work. Like genuinely putting the self-care first thing that I can in a day. For me, that's daily morning pages. It's journaling. It's doing Reiki and energy work, which is, another thing I guide people through. And just movement in nature. If I get those three things in at the top of the day, I am just a different human. I really can engage in this dance of reciprocity in the creative way I'm trying to get people to do as well. And it really doesn't take that long. Honestly, if I can do that for 30 minutes in the morning, that's great.
Yeah. Well, and you have created, this goes nicely into confidently setting healthy boundaries. This is a boundary for you. This is a non-negotiable for you. That is set aside. That has already been determined. And when you've already determined it, you can't kick it out. I mean, you can, but you're less likely to because it's incorporated into the schedule. You know its value. It's a part of the day. When did you realize this was important for you to do that?
Like a lot of us, and talking to you about your story, not until I was in burnout. So it's very real to go, oh, it was full like adrenal fatigue. It was a lot of recovery that was needed there, which is the truth is I was engaging in the juggling and it was white knuckling. I called it back then. And it was actually only just before the pandemic that I started to have the realization. And then, of course, the universe did it for me, like for a lot of us, with the world shutting down. And I quickly went, I can't go back. There's no going back. So I turned all of that energy I'd been putting out as a teacher and an actor and all these things on myself and let everything else go. That it really was a full year there of a lot of energy work on myself, taking all of these lessons to heart in a deeper way, and finding what that balance was going to be as, of course, the world was going to get moving again and we wanted it to, but so that I can take aligned action in a different way right now. The truth is I was so disembodied. I always say I was just cut off from the neck down. And the main work I'm doing with people now is that I did not even have an awareness of my own intuition anymore. So it was really a time of reclaiming connection to my intuition.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up because you and I talked about this when we met. We connected on a lot of things right away. You did it younger than me. Good for you because you got it out of the way sooner. But I mean, I hit that same kind of wall in my own life where it was like my body was just screaming, no more. You have to pay attention to me now. I'm not giving you another choice in the matter. And it's that disassociation that we walk around in. We are so disconnected from what's happening in our bodies that when we finally settle into connecting with it, I don't know about you, but for me, it was really noisy for a while. Like I felt things everywhere in my body, numbness, tight, every tingling, every single thing, and had to really like one thing at a time as I unpacked the different parts that needed to be tended to it and healed a little at a time. These things started healing. And I still I recognize them now when they come up. I'm like, oh, that's coming up. That means X, Y, Z. Was it like that for you?
100%. And I will say becoming a Reiki master and doing this energy work on myself, there was also this wild sound, this rewilding that felt like it wanted to come out of me, that I would be doing energy work alone in the bedroom. I'd be done. And my husband would be like, what was happening? And it was like a full body yelp, probably, that had been so conditioned out of me and held back. And there was grief. And then on the other side of that, there was like profound freedom and joy and laughter when I got to my belly that wanted to come. It was two sides of the same coin, but I'd been shutting down all of it, numbing it in some way.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting because I would have these. It's so interesting when we finally give our nervous systems finally feel safe enough to evacuate and expose and bring to light all of these feelings and all of these things that have been residing inside us that we've stuffed down that we didn't even know were there. And I would have these moments of just sobbing. I didn't even know why. It would happen a lot when I was working out. Like if I had worked out and done some yoga and really settled my mind, and my therapist was like, that's actually very normal. And I would come out of a yoga and I would just sob, and my husband would just hold me and just wrap his arms around me because that felt safe. And I would just let it out. Then there would be these of just laughter to the point we were crying. And he's like, what's something that was mildly funny would just explode out of me. So I think that is a very common response when we finally allow all of this to be. And we quit trying to mold and fit into spaces and places that we were never intended to inhabit, and quit shutting down the things we were never supposed to be shutting down.
100%. That is a main thing that I talk about in groups too, and through the Artist Way process, because my belief too is we're all meant to be creative. Just because it's our life force energy, like you moving that body or just dancing alone in the bedroom and all of it. But the main tenet we start with in Artist Way is recovering a sense of safety. Like you just said, like that inner kiddo somehow doesn't feel safe to like take up space or laugh joyfully or come out to play. So this is getting back in that reciprocity and being both the parent, reparenting, and that inner kiddo to get back to the freedom and the play that wants to come out.
Yeah. And this really, all this that we've been talking about is emotional, mental, physical, spiritual health embodied. I mean, this is all the connections we identify. All these places and ways it was manifesting in us physically, mentally, and emotionally that we finally had to allow to come out and deal with. And because our bodies were just like not allowing us to ignore it anymore. So we've both had very clear experiences with those connections and what happens when they're not being tended to. How did you learn about these practices that you're in now? You've mentioned the Reiki, human design is part of it. You've got the Artist Way and that creative piece. And I'm so glad you brought up that creative piece, because I think we should talk about too, what creative is such a more expansive word and meaning than we give credit to. It's not only in the traditional senses and ways that we talk about through singing and instrument playing and painting and drawing and acting. Those are the things we recognize and we know, but there's other ways. And I had to learn this for years. I'm like, I'm not really much of a creative. I mean, I can carry a tune, but blah, blah, blah. I learned through the process of this work I'm doing now that this is where my creativity shows up. This is how I'm creative. And it was like, oh, creativity is not this little box. It is however we are able to express ourselves and find ourselves and use our voice in a way that feels in alignment with us.
Yes. I was just hard nodding my head off for those who can't see on a podcast. This is the energy too of, one of my favorite quotes that I return to and remind people of, and the point of this work I'm doing with people is a Henry Miller quote: to make living itself an art. That is the goal. We associate so much of the idea of creativity to end result, product. It becomes militaristic discipline. When really, it's just, how do you want to savor the journey of living and engage in this dance? Which is why I picked that last word, expansive, as opposed to the contraction that I was doing inside of my body before. That was so fearful. That wasn't curious like creativity is. So what is it to be expansive and just engage in savoring the process over the end product a little bit more and realizing that's just living creatively.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you learn about these practices? What you did, you got curious, I would imagine, but tell me about this coming to this space of like, well, as I've been looking for.
Yes, as an actor, as any artist, I think many people have heard about the book Artist Way. It's been around forever. It is so well known. I was an actor, and yet I was very much in tunnel vision. Like I said, it was sort of that militaristic discipline of, I'm an actor, so you're all in. This is the self-definition. This is the faux control I had to cling to. And even though other things were pinging me, like maybe you want to write, maybe you want this, I was very much in that linear either or thinking that was so stifling. So I had really lost any joy in the dream of it. And a group of friends suggested we all do the Artist Way. That book is a reclamation. As some people, I've had a bunch of therapists now do it with me. They're like, this is like 3 years of therapy in 3 months. But this is the point of why it's so great. Wow. It's also it's big, but it's also really fun. It really gets you back to like that play and reciprocity we're talking about. And this was the first thing that expanded the path for me. And I went, oh, if the limits are really shot, the jig is up. What am I going to do with a sense of self-empowerment? And I did start writing. And then I actually want to teach actors. I want this. I want this. I found like specificity and clarity. But of course, then I hadn't dealt with the other root things. So I was still on the hamster wheel of the militaristic discipline. And that brought things to the surface. I like to say Artist Way opens a door to a wide open field of possibility. But it was then, I think, the waterfall effect of mind, body, spirit. My body still was not okay. Then Reiki energy came calling. I had received it from people, and then an offering came up, to train in it myself. And I had a full body yes for maybe the first time in a long time. And only in following that did I bring all of those things to the surface. And still then the next thing that came calling, mind, body, spirit, was human design, because I was still comparing my path to other people's. The comparison, the brain drain train, it was like, I didn't know how to let go of it. And this incarnation system just felt so affirming, was the word I used with you too, Melissa, when we did it. Like, I felt so seen for the first time in my life. Like, oh, there's nothing wrong with me or how I've been flowing. I was just trying to keep up with the tigers on the hamster wheel. And I'm a human design projector, and I need more rest, and I need breaks. And I'm here to sort of be a bird in the sky and hover above it all. So that affirmed sort of what you said. A lot of my innate superpowers and gifts were shut down because I was comparing and I was walking somebody else's path. So it really was a waterfall effect, which I think happens if you open to mind, body, or spirit in a different way. You're not going to be able to ignore the other ones. That's what I felt.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think once you find that alignment, you find that like, oh, this makes so much more sense now. No wonder I felt so out of sorts in this space. This space was never meant for me. And I think this happens a lot in a capitalist society where we're giving these marching orders of how we're supposed to show up in the world. And there's not the freedom to recognize that there's more than one way to do things, and we each have our own unique way. And if we're allowed and supported and affirmed in showing up in it, we can shine. But it starts very young. It starts with the narratives we hear as kids. It starts with our school systems and how they operate and what we're told is the right and wrong way to show up in the world. And so we take this creativity and this freedom out of kids before they've even had a chance to start. If they don't learn in the way that is presented in these systems we put, and they're well-intended systems, but there's not flexibility within them. They're designed for convenience to meet mass numbers instead of meeting each individual where they are. And so it creates this whole narrative that by the time we have gotten out of high school, if we make it that far and onto whatever we decide is next, many times according to the narrative, it can take a while for us to really get a handle on, oh, wait a minute, these systems, these ways of existing really don't work for me. I've got to get back in touch with me and what getting in touch with me looks like. And you were able to do that. And I think it's so important that we talk about that, because I feel like we're seeing this. I have 3 grown daughters, 2 Gen Zs and 1 very young millennial. She just made the millennial jump. I think she's more of a zillennial. I don't know if that's a thing or not. But their intention is very different than ours. They're like, we're not getting on that hamster wheel. We are going to show up in ways that are authentic to us. We are going to reside in systems that are aligned with us. We are not going to buy the narrative that there's only one 80-hour week, drive yourself into the ground to get the house and the car and all the things to live. We're not going to do that. We're just not going to do that. And so they're starting to tap into this. I think just because they've seen the generations that have like this, there's some pieces of this that just are not serving our parents and our grandparents and our aunts and uncles. And so I think we're starting to see more of a move in this direction. These conversations are starting to happen more, but with all this that you've learned, you've decided not only how this world not only works well for me, I'm going to show up unapologetically in it, and I'm going to support others in going on this journey with me unapologetically, which is the next point of how we support ourselves and other women in living unapologetically. This is what you do. This is how you and Erin met. Talk to me about that under realization of, not only can I help myself, I think I can help other people with this too.
I love that so much. And I love the word. I just want to hear it over and over, unapologetically, because if I could just share, one of the main first things that happens in groups is there will come a week when the person, you see their energy is different. And then when it's their turn to share, they go, I almost didn't come today. Those are the exact times when I tell everyone from the beginning, please come on those days. And here's what comes. They have feelings. They have what we call a kriya in Artist Way, a spiritual tantrum. They get witnessed in all of those feelings in an unapologetic way. And something gets free there. But what they share is they almost didn't come because they didn't feel like they had anything to offer today. We are so put in this capitalist society of like, what are you going to go do? What are you going to make? It is so different. The reciprocity I feel now, wanting to offer and be of service to people in an unapologetic way that is not from this capitalist. Here's how you have to go show up and prove yourself and be perfect, showing up on camera and all of these things that come up in us. And I think that happens in groups because people show up on those days and push through. And I always affirm what we're releasing there are those old conditioning paradigms of guilt, shame, the not enoughness. But I do think it's most important to be seen and heard in community in that, not doing any sort of solo work. And we see it happen, and people are different after that day when they almost didn't show up.
Great. I love that. And it just shows the power of connection, because we're designed as humans to connect with each other, but we are human beings, not human doings. And I know that we hear that language a lot, but I think we need to sit with that, because I was trapped for years in this idea of value and production. My value is equal to how much I produce and how well I produce it. It's not just producing it. I got to produce it well, because that is how I received affirmation. That was where everything that people showed in the spaces that I grew up and lived in. I was given approval and love and affirmation when I produced, and I produced well, and I showed up and I showed up well. And the idea of sitting and being still was considered lazy and unproductive, and it wasn't celebrated as the rest that you need to refill. It wasn't celebrated as a time to let your creativity come to life. It just wasn't celebrated. And so you have to kind of find that within yourself and realize it is insane. I think we can just keep going at this pace and not hit a wall. There has got to be common sense will tell you, if you sit with it for a minute and get yourself off the hamster wheel, that of course I have to rest and refill. And of course, when I look at other people's lives and see them going hard, I see that they need to rest and refill. So how do I not see this for myself? But I think we have to go back to those narratives and those stories and unpack that. I'm curious, how has this impacted your creativity? Because you're not only acting now, you're writing, you're directing. Talk about that a little bit, about how it's impacted that part of your life.
Oh, everything you just described. I think the main thing is I feel more of a sense of peace with what is also one of my main gifts in human design, which is some people feel like they have a cup of ideas. I have an overflowing bathtub of ideas. So in the past, that actually would stop me in my tracks, and I'd go, I'm not going to be able to do all this in one lifetime. Again, output. I can't make all of this. Where do I begin? And it's really made me find a peace with being more of a seeker than even a finder in this lifetime. And I always ask people, is the antenna up? Is the question with your own intuition. If the antenna is up and you're receiving and, you're getting connections, like connecting to you, Melissa, and signs and synchronicities and all of it, isn't that the point? And I will receive whatever next inspiration comes. I will feel from my intuition when it's aligned action or not, and just have peace with that. And also peace with I just want to enjoy the process of life and be in wonder and inspiration and curiosity, and not here's how I have to go commodify all of these ideas in my brain.
Yeah, exactly. And when you honor that, everything kind of settles it within you. I noticed when I started working from home and doing my own schedule for the first time, and instead of being on another schedule, I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, I always resisted. I never, even in my days coming out of college, I always wanted to find a different, more convenient way to do things. I never thought that the 8 to 5 was really like, why do we have to do it that way? Or why do I have to be here? Why can't I do it from here? I can get us. And so when I was finally able to do that, I'm like, this is what I have been yearning for my whole life. And in the world, the culture has told me that way is the wrong way or not the most productive way. And it's like, no, actually, for me, this is the most productive and aligned way. And I will be so much more effective in how I show up by honoring that. And so I think that is when you finally tap into how it is, you allow yourself to be how you were designed to be and respond to that. You see all of a sudden you're like, oh,
wow, I can actually get more done as a human design projector when I work a couple hours and I take a nap. Oh, amazing. Look what I always wanted to do. But when I release the guilt and the laziness that I was brought up with too, and all of that, I also feel this reconnecting people to their intuition and their embodiment and their design. Things want to feel easier. That doesn't mean there isn't work and struggle, but it is all growth mindset and curiosity then, and doing it my way. It's not the hamster wheel struggle bus of the comparison that I was in.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it also frees you up because the next talking point is, the importance of setting and coming back to our why and our values. We first have to live in a way that's honoring to ourselves before we can even tap into our why and our values, because so many times we think we are living out of our own, but we're actually living out of the ones that we were told we were supposed to have. And so we've lived according to those. And it's not until we do this work, they're like, oh, hold on a minute. Like for me, I will never forget when I realized a couple of years ago, I was redoing the values thing again. It was some kind of activity. I can't remember. I was doing it with a Brene Brown book or something. And and a travel kept coming up as one of my values. And at first I was still in that comparison mindset, and that felt so frivolous to me. And it was finally, I think it was my middle daughter. She's like, Mom, travel is totally a value of yours. And it fills you up. It brings to life your curiosity. You come home more informed. She started pointing out all the things that she observed in me as I traveled. And I was like, you're right. That is a value. It's not frivolous. It does light up all these other things in me. And it's okay for me to claim that. And so I finally, instead of fighting it, like, oh my gosh, what kind of a value is that? What will that produce? I finally just embraced it as, yeah, absolutely. And my husband and I, travel is a huge value of ours. And we start feeling stifled if we go too long without doing some kind of travel.
I love that. And, I love what you said too, because for me, getting really clear on them with all of these modalities, there's going to be a lot of shadow over them for a lot of people. And there was for me that actually a lot of those root things, again, we were told were not okay somehow. And mine, actually, my funniest, is that really a core tenet of my life and business? I call it trickster vibes. Trickster vibes. The trickster, what I call gate of human design, is one of my main things that, just a little more technical for people that want to look at where Neptune is in their human design chart. It's usually this inherent gift or superpower that we have the most shadow, like a veil over. And mine is trickster vibes. And I realized it absolutely is what I was doing. But I was so scared to name it that tricky thing or claim it in some way, when really I am being a pattern disruptor with people. That is what I want to be doing. Let's disrupt those patterns and conditionings inside of ourselves. Let's disrupt out in the world with your big light and not shutting it down anymore. And so I want to empower people to be a little more tricksy and get off the linear path and find their back door way in. Yeah.
Yeah. Was that your favorite value that you have identified? I love that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love it so much. And I also almost couldn't even speak it out loud at first. I went, well, and how I was raised. And I think the constriction and the judgment, I was even like, is that wrong? Is that evil? Imagining this trickster leaving the path from everyone else. And I went, well, obviously you have a shadow around that. And I did. And yet it is how I feel. Befriend, there's no angel and devil on my shoulders. There's this other part of you that is, again, the rewilding part that wants to go their own way. And I think that's trickster in me.
I love that so much. I love that because society, the collective, we have moralized these things and, called them good or bad. I mean, I one of my biggest pet peeves, and you and I talked about this, I think, when we met, is when people define emotions as good emotions and bad emotions. I'm like, no, I will fight you on that until the day is done. Their emotions are clues. They're clues to let us know how we're feeling, what needs to be processed, what needs to be allowed, what needs to be moved through. They're clues, they're indicators. And we need to pay attention and allow all of them and get curious about all of them and give them all the acknowledgement and attention they need. And that's the same with, how we were made and wired. There's these values within us. And that's how we were designed to show up in the world. And so let's honor that. I think there's so many more of us women that have that disruptor in us than feel safe or okay to allow out. Because I tell you what, it's those disruptors that are going to help shift these narratives and create the safe spaces that we want in this world for all of us to be able to show up without fear, knowing we're going to be treated well, with respect, with equity, with kindness. I mean, all those things, but it's going to take some disruptor in a lot of us to go out and make this happen. But it's like you hear from the time you're a kid, like if you go to your school teacher conference and it might say on your thing, disruptive in the classroom. Okay. Well, what does that mean? I mean, it delivered as a negative from the time you're a little kid when, it's like, is it, or is it just the fact that you are holding those people back in a way that's not honoring to them? And so this is how it comes out. But what happens if you channel that disruptor and allow them to be who they are? What kind of difference can they make in the world when they're allowed to show up as their fully embodied selves?
Oh, listen, there we go. Great. We solved everything. Everyone go be a trickster and everything will be all right. But I just feel like that to me now. I love that what you said, as opposed to, oh, really, look at this kid in this classroom who wants to be seen and heard. Maybe they really want to be a leader, and we can see that and we can affirm that and like let our ego go as a teacher in some way to get collaborative with this student. I mean, what a different way to look at it. And I love what you said around the feelings. Oh, same. And that was the first, I think, big aha for me, the first reclamation from the artist's way. I love that Julia Cameron talks about all of it. She's like, anger and jealousy, we do all these exercises with it, are a map. They are the next action's invitation. They are the part of you that's been shut down. So if only we can journal, we can metabolize, we can do the energy work to get to the root of it and affirm it. For me, that didn't feel allowed. It didn't feel safe in my household. And so it all was like a monster hiding in the closet to me. I really would not get angry and let that out until doing Artist's Way. And then I saw there's no monster in the closet. That was, again, just a little inner kiddo part of me that was so scared and just wanted to be like, lay on the floor like I did and yelp it out and don't care what anyone else thinks. And it was so affirming. There's nothing wrong with any of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. Well, it goes really nice into living out of your own expectations versus others' expectations. You do that and you really help others to do that too. So talk to me about that expectations journey.
It was all expectations. I think the first thing I talk about with people that I felt for myself was releasing the good girl syndrome. And then that led into good anything. Again, who's defining the good versus bad that you said who? And to me, the word that came up was, and is a root one, I actually think now doing so many human design readings for people, am I trying to prove myself or am I being my most sovereign self? And I was just constantly trying to prove, and also get that validation as an artist, as an actor, just as a quote, good human in some way. And I really feel now the adage that I found that I come back to over and over is, am I living from the outside in or from the inside out? And I try to just return to that all of the time and see So many other adages around that come up. Am I coming from love or for love? Well, only when I'm listening to my own intuition and doing my morning routine and filling up my well first, can I truly show up and want to be an energy worker for people in this and know that I'm coming from love and not for some external ego or validation.
Oh, I love that, coming from love or for love. That is key. What an important question to ask yourself. When's the first time, do you remember the first time you were able to connect with that question? Because that is powerful.
I don't think it was conscious, but, I actually think because there was so much that was repressed and everything I was just sharing, I actually think that acting called to me because it was the key to opening all of that. I still sure was held in life, but you're free in acting to yell and let out all of these things. And when I realized, I really felt so free pretty early on from an early age in acting. I felt like I realize now, but I didn't see then, that freedom that I gave myself so fully when maybe a lot of people still felt held in acting. I felt so free. That was an act of self-love that I didn't even realize at the time. That was me growing up knowing I need this release. I need this. I don't even know why. And I felt so free there, even though it didn't make sense. That at the beginning, clearly things changed often because of capitalism and all that, like we said, but that wasn't coming like for love at the beginning. I just somehow knew this was in me and I needed it. And I realize now, like, that was this first act of freeing self-love for myself.
Wow. Wow. So powerful. So when people come to you to work with you, I would imagine they're very loaded with this whole expectations piece of living out of others versus their own. Where do you start with them? If you can just give us a peek into that to help them start processing the difference between living out of their others, which we all have that space where we got to do that, versus their own.
Usually the most powerful tool that I start with people is the one that they will go kicking and screaming to because of that. And it is what in the artist way she calls going on an artist date each week. An artist date is a time alone. You cannot go with anyone else. It is not meant to be productive. It is you dating yourself out in the world and doing something that will be pure play, joy, exploration, all that. That sounds lovely, but is very triggering to people who have all of these expectations that they are living within or they put on themselves. They're like, I can't possibly take 2 hours to go do that for myself. I can't possibly take the time. Usually it's time. I can't. And yet it's the key, the freedom of there's nothing to prove. You're alone by yourself out in the world. No one can see you and you're dating yourself. And also there's no militaristic discipline and end result. That is why I actually think it's really triggering to people, but then it's the key to the first freedom of, like you said, being over doing and letting go of those expectations.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's so good. And boy, you hit on when we are asked to do something just for ourselves, for the enjoyment of it, without an actual attached response or expectation, and just be quiet with ourselves. We're so uncomfortable with that. That is just not how we've been trained. And I mean, and that getting quiet makes people really, and being by themselves makes people really uneasy. I think, because it allows a lot of the noise to come to the surface. You can't push back or ignore anymore as well. So not only are you not, you're not checking an item off a list, or, like me, when I went into therapy, when I was in the fall of 2019, I'm like, I'm going to come here for 6 months. I'm going to get some tools and resources and I'll be out of here and on my way. No, that is not what happened. And thank God it didn't. But that was just such a conditioning. So yeah, so I think I can imagine that was something that I would embrace now. But if you would have told me that, 5-6 years ago, I'd been like, excuse me, what am I doing? What am I supposed to get out of that?
Yeah. What am I supposed to get out of that? And what you just said, like, People are rushing through everything. It's not great. I'm going to do this one thing and I'm perfectly healed and I'll go. It's just not the truth of it. So again, I also think these artist dates and taking that time by yourself, I always am telling people like, slow down. If people don't even know what to do, I'm like, go for a walk unplugged and look up and not down, because I feel that was the first root thing for me. As I started this work, I realized I was rushing through everything. I just wasn't even paying attention. So even if the next right connection, intuitive step was right in front of me, I wouldn't have seen it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's such a great, you think of these drives, that you take when you go to work, and you hear people talk about all the time that they're so conditioned in doing it that they don't even remember. They'll get to they'll be almost to work. You're like, oh my God, I don't remember the last 15 minutes because I'm just so conditioned in it. We stop being present. We're just going to autopilot, but we miss. And so I remember an activity that I was given to do early on was intentionally go for a walk through a familiar place, but look at each side. No music, no podcast, just yourself. Look around, see what you notice, see what you see. Do this several times. And I promise you, if you stay intentional and focused, you'll see. And it was like practice to help me stay present. And you'll see different things and notice different things each time you go for many, many times. So I was like, yeah, whatever. Oh my gosh. But it's also such a realization to how, again, going back to that disconnected we are, how we just go into this tunnel vision, get to the end location. And my husband has been much more willing to go on this trail for years than I have, but he's always said, ever since we've known each other, enjoy the journey. I'm like, journey schmurney, where's the finish line? I mean, I ran track. I was a sprinter. You take off and you finish and you win. What do I win? And so, having to learn to smell the roses, and what am I learning along the way? And, one of the things that I started doing a few months ago that my therapist recommended is writing down my wins each day. And my wins don't have to be, oh my gosh, I had this many downloads today or whatever, or I had this workout. It's like, I took time off at 2:30 today to take a 20-minute nap because I felt drowsy and I needed it. It's those kinds of things. I, stopped working at 2:30 today because there really wasn't anything else I had to get done and I was tired and I needed a break. My brain and my body were sending me signals. So it's those kinds of, and so for me, it was a redefining what's winning. And what is this way of winning costing me versus this other more enjoy the journey winning?
Yes. And we bring it back to creativity for me, because winning to who? Because in someone else's perspective, we're not winning. Someone else's we are. Art and creativity and life is all subjective. So that also is so freeing to realize I just felt so lit up by the play I just made and directed. I guarantee we still got a bad review. Bad to who? It is all subjective in that. And also what you just described, I think is so powerful. What I have now found, and I see in groups in and out, is what I call grief and celebration being two sides of the same coin. This is actually very much the teachings of Martin Prechtel, this amazing mind practitioner. But he talks about if we don't befriend both sides of that coin, you're not going to feel either of them. So I love what you just described. Why was it so hard? Why can't we celebrate ourselves? Because maybe we still haven't grieved this other thing or these control that we actually don't have from this self-definition. So I can't celebrate myself because I'm also so scared of the other shoe's going to drop or the grief.
Yeah. So true. That's so important. Such a big part of it. And which really, this goes beautifully into accepting the layered aspects of ourselves, all the pieces and parts of who we are that make up who we are, the parts we love, the parts we've denied, the parts we've stuffed, the parts we have grief and shame around. There's so many pieces and parts of us that we don't allow ourselves to live out of because of all these different, you said shadows earlier that we have, and be unpacked when what I've learned and when I'm working with women in groups and one-on-one, we start here. We start with the layers piece. I'm like, we're going to start with layers because it's in embracing these and learning how to get curious rather than judgmental with these, that we can welcome all the parts of us in, acknowledge them, know our value is made up of who we are, not what we do. When we can understand that value, we are going to be more willing to prioritize us, to get to know us, to honor us, to identify what my values are, my why, what are my expectations, what are my healthy boundaries, because I know my value and it's not based out of all these other things that the world has told me accomplishment-wise make me important or valuable. And so we starting with that layers piece, and that's what you've just described. And I think it's so interesting because, you're in the acting world in Hollywood, it is packed full of all of these narratives about good, bad, acceptance, ratings, reviews. And it's such an interesting conundrum to me because it draws some of the most creative and expansive thinking people in the world. Yet there's these systems in place that try to squash it out of you by all of these narratives that they put around what success is and isn't. So the fact that you've been able to navigate that in this world to me and really embrace all of your layers the way you have, I think is remarkable.
Whoosh, when you put it like that, Melissa, oh my God, I will celebrate that. I receive that. Because I do think back, I came out here when I was 21 and it's everything you said, like wanted to be expansive, wanted to do all of these things. And I won't even regurgitate them here. All of the things that I was told had to change about my physical form, all of the things I was told there, and there obviously was still, even back then, even though I was so scared, was still that trickster in me who just kept being like, no. And I think it requires a lot of no to pull back those layers, I guess, to find my hell yes, as I say to people in human design, get to the root of your hell yes inside all of those layers, which is really just whispering like, you're enough. Just stay in the truth of who you are. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So important. So much value in that, because that's when you can really show up authentically. When you can embrace your layers and know your value, it opens the door. When you can, the most important shift in my thinking that's ever happened, and it's still the work in progress. I still want to be judgmental at times. I still especially when something's really enraging me, and I just want to. I really have to pull myself back and consider narratives, and also, and really stop myself in my tracks. So this is not something I've accomplished by any means. It is a process. But with me, getting curious rather than judgmental was a key, because with curiosity, judgment cannot reside and stay there. With curiosity, comfort and not being pushed out of because comfort is a tricky one that a lot of people fall into the trap of too. It's comfortable so they don't shift. But it's like, and sometimes you're living in comfort, you don't even realize it. It's like, if you're feeling an angst within you, that comfort might not be what you think it is. It might be really holding you back from being all that you were designed and created to be. And I think that's, would you say when you came out to California when you were 21, was that curiosity what really drove you? Because that's a big move to make.
Yeah, I was passionate, which was one of my words at the top, maybe more. It was like, a passion that leads to even in energy work, our gut. I always talk about our sacral, like that's what keeps us going. And I just had such a jump start of passion in that I really did leap. And I'm sure to the chagrin of my mother, people were like, really? Are you just going to get in the car and drive across the country? But I really was lit up with passion, I would say would be the thing back then. The thing I love what you're bringing up that has kept it sustainable is curiosity, like, the passion can come and go with things. I've taken a break from acting. I've started writing. I've done this. I finally went, I do want to direct. Like passions change around things, but that curiosity I love. I think that's what kept it sustainable. And also the judgment. I mean, Melissa, come on. Of course we do. And I always see, I love to me also the envy part of it. We talk in the artist way, we call it the jealousy map. Is actually such a powerful thing. Often when I'm having that judgment of people, there's some envy there, or they're a mirror to that part of me that is calling for some actions invitation. So I love the word now, actually seeing those people as expanders for me and being like, okay, what part of me needs to expand around this?
I love that. That's so good. Oh my gosh. I'm going to take that with me. That's because that's the right question. That is, when, that's the right question. Like, what is this bringing up in me? What needs to be tapped into that this is causing this disruption within me? Oh yeah. That's so good. All right. In Living Out Feel, which you are doing in finding empowerment, embracing layers, talk to me about the impact that has had on your relationship with yourself, as well as your relationship with other people.
My relationship with myself, this becomes a little full circle, I think, to what you asked before. Another thing I wanted to say is I think the empowerment comes from releasing expectations that I put on myself and actually not even having, I would dare say, I mean, I still do, it comes up, but expectations on myself with anything, truly being in intuition and trickster vibes, being the real empowerment. I think what I've found there for myself then is befriending the surrender part of the creative life process, which is still, of course, the hardest part, but really befriending that surrender part of the process. For me, with myself has led to that empowerment, but the empowerment is like a different dance with the universe, a different dance with reciprocity, which of course then led to be able to engage in that dance with other people in a different way. Realize like I held so much in because of the fear of vulnerability and the vulnerability hangovers, as opposed to realizing when I found that within myself, people just want to see your authenticity in all sides of you. And like, yes, there's going to be vulnerability. And what I always say to others, and I befriended in myself now, like, if it doesn't feel like that, I'm actually probably off track in some way. Like as I'm on a creative life path that involves risk and vulnerability, it probably should feel like that sometimes. And being around the right people who support your authenticity, I think it inherently happens when I follow that empowerment and intuition for myself now.
Yeah. Yeah. That people you surround yourself with, that is so key. Because though the people you surround yourself with, this goes back to the energy piece, will either deplete from or add to your energy. And so being mindful of that. And when you're living authentic to yourself, when you're in touch with who you are, you're recognizing that you're allowing that to be, that impacts the kind of people you attract. It also impacts the kind of people that you're like, this is just like, I might have to love you from afar because this is not, and we can be kind and direct with those things, but we become so much more aware of that. And I love what you said about the releasing expectations. I started this whole thing 4+ years ago now, going into our 5th year, which is hard. When I originally started, it's the first thing I ever did in my life where I went into it with no expectation. I just knew it was the right next thing to do. And it was such a foreign, but also really life-giving feeling. And I'm like, I know I'm absolutely supposed to do this. This might be the most aligned thing with myself that I've ever launched, because I'm just following my tuition that it's the right thing to do. And I honestly have not put any expectations out there for it other than that I know this is what I'm supposed to do. And that was so out of sorts for me because I was for years, I lived in such a codependent, and I'm naturally competitive, do more, do better, all the things. And so for me to be able to acknowledge that and say that, my husband's like, whoa, who are you? I don't, nice to meet you. I mean, but it's interesting because that's the one thing as I've continued to build it and add these different pieces to it, I've really tried to stay true to there are different parts and pieces and the order that I've done it in that people have been like, oh, are you sure you should do that or this or that? And I'm just like, this may not make sense to you, but I'm really trying to stay true to me and what feels aligned to me and trusting that process. And I have, and I'm so, there's a few things I did along the way where I didn't do that. And I knew it and I felt it. And I was just like, I felt once and you go back and I was like, I knew I shouldn't have done that thing.
Yes.
But I'm going to honor it now, but I'm going to release it when my commitment to that has come up because I allowed the outer expectations and pushes, even, and I knew, I made a year commitment to this thing and I knew 3 months into it, maybe less, that I was like, oh, what have I done? I knew I should have listened to myself. And ever since then, I'm like, nope, I will not do that. I will listen to myself. I will not let outside voices detract me from that. That doesn't mean I don't take in advice and insights and consider things. But when that gut thing in me is telling me something's right, I'm going to listen to that.
Yes. And I love how you just put it, because this is one of the main things that I feel is different in the work that I'm doing than a lot of people and practitioners is we can be trusting our intuition, doing this healing work, bringing things to consciousness and taking aligned action now. I always say, start creating now in the messy middle. I always bring up the Rumi quote, as you start to walk on the way appears. We're not going to have a manual, be like, I've perfectly figured myself out. Now I can start creating or walking. You have to just start walking as you're doing this work of bringing things to consciousness. And that's the balance there. So I love that. And same with my business. And there've been plenty of times, I went, well, you didn't trust your intuition and you got off path. And I'm like, okay. And we just circle back. But those are the most ripe moments where I've actually put the embodiment and intuition thing into practice. And I learned so much more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It just kind of reinforces all those, yep. Okay. Now I know. And you don't miss it anymore. It's very, right away. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. So good. As we wind down here, tell me 5 activities that nourish you.
Walking, being in nature, daily journaling, Reiki and energy work, and playing with my kid.
3 is such a fun age too. They're just getting such personalities at that age.
Such imagination and personality.
So yeah. And that's, you hear people all the time talking about, go back to your 3 to 5-year-old self. What was she like? Because that is when I feel like we are the most uninhibited. We are really showing up as our most authentic selves and being able to tap, into that. Oh yeah. So good. It's oh, may she never lose that. May she never lose that. All right. And 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
Peaceful, creative, aligned, surprised, and traveling, Melissa. It's definitely the last one. Yes, I need some nomadic travel again. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I'm with you. I understand that completely. All right. People can find you and follow you. This will also all be on our website at embracinglayers.com on the resources page. But let people know right now how they can find you, follow you, work with you, all those things.
On all of the socials, we're at The Howling Hive. And it's thehowlinghive.org for our website. Has all of that. Also, we have a link. We have a private app because, well, social media is something right now. And so I made an app for our community. Anyone, it's like, if we're sick of the ads and the algorithm, this is a very like sacred private space where everyone can come, and it has free courses and our free ebook about human design and all those things on it.
Okay, great. And that is it. Is the app a Howling Hive as well?
It's the link is on our website. It's actually through the Mighty Networks, so you can search on Mighty Networks. Mm-hmm.
Okay, but it's a link website. Perfect. All right. Any last thoughts you'd like to leave with our listeners today?
Gratitude is what I'm feeling right now, Melissa, for you and this and everything you're doing, and I think real gratitude has been a shift in my life. Instead of guilty gratitude, I used to call it when I was in. Real gratitude feels like presence and play and embracing the day with this creative spirit that I just want everyone to go savor this journey. So I hope we can all go do that and just be present and grateful right now.
Yeah. Barbara, thank you so much for being with me today. Such a joy to have you. I look forward to having you on panels and different things in the future. I just, it's doing these kinds of practices and sharing them with women. It's going to allow us to show up as our most authentic selves, to be the disruptors that we need to be in the spaces we need to be, and honor however it is that we are designed to be, feeling safe and free to live in that space and embody that. And if we can support each other in doing that, that's how we shift these narratives. So thank you so much for how you show up in the world and the important work you do. It matters. And I'm so thankful that Erin connected us. Listeners, so much to gather from this today. Take good care of yourselves. Tap into these resources. We're here to support you. We want you to feel like you can live your most authentic, healthiest life. Celebrate that without apology. Take good care of yourselves. Thanks so much for being with us here today on the Feel Podcast, and we'll see you again soon. Take care. Hello, and thank you so much for being with us today on this episode of the Feel Podcast. If you would like more information on how you can apply these talking points that I share with our guests in each episode to your own life, really utilize this Feel framework, go to embracinglayers.com, fill out our contact form, and let's set up a free 30-minute consultation to talk about how you can start living your most authentic, organic, healthy, feel-fueled life. Thanks again for being with us today. We'll be back to you soon with another episode here on the Feel Podcast.